Dear colleagues, we continue our working day and now we'll be speaking on the youth in occupation, how to help Crimeans to get education on Ukraine's mainland. We will have Valentyna Potapova, Education Programs Coordinator, Synaver Kadyrov, Coordinator of Almenda Center for Public Education, and Valentyna Potapova, Education Programs Coordinator. Dear colleagues, the floor is yours. I believe that we'll start immediately, three of us, for you to be more comfortable in asking your questions. The Center of Public Education has been set up and worked in Yalta, Crimea. The major objectives of our center were to educate people in the human rights field and in the field of generic education. So after Crimean events, we left Crimea for Kiev immediately, and it happened so that we had to deal with the people who stayed in annexed Crimea. In order to understand what has happened, we should be aware of the figures that will illustrate the problem. And I have to admit that in February 2014 in Crimea we had 190,000 pupils, 25,000 of teachers and 60,000 of higher school students. And that amount of people remained with no access to Ukrainian education. And if we are dealing with the problems of Crimean, our educational problem in Crimea, integration and reintegration of the mentioned groups in the Ukrainian educational field, we must identify here three directions. First one is the secondary education, and the question immediately appears how to make possible for Ukrainian pupils to have Ukrainian certificate of secondary education, and the pupils that are now studying with the secondary schools having the basic education and specialized education, which means 10th and 11th year. Next group is they are students, entered Ukrainian higher schools and universities, and after Crimea annexation they traveled to Russia with the changes in educational programs. The third group, the most vulnerable one, is the group of teachers and professors of universities. And if students is the most mobile group, they could leave Crimea, but this group, educators, they have their families, their households, and it's very difficult for them to start from zero. For instance, problems like how to have these Ukrainian qualifications to be proved. For them it is again the question how they could teach the subjects like Ukrainian language, Ukrainian literature, history of Ukraine, because all that subjects were ruined actually. And the third group is Tatar classes that are under closure everywhere in Crimea. I would like to give floor to Shutina Yelena, who is involved in the problem number one, according to my list, the problem of getting Ukrainian certificate of education, and what the Ministry of Education is doing in this field in order to preserve continuity between the occupied territory and the mainland part of Ukraine. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for invitation, and I would like to inform you which way the Ministry of Education of Ukraine affects the proper steps for the children to have certificate of education. We proposed everybody all the possible means. All the children that would like to be educated according to Ukrainian standards, they could be enlisted into Ukrainian schools. The procedure is maximum simple, and it is as follows. For instance, the parents, they submit an application to, for instance, Cherkasy school number 5. Please take my child to your school to have this externate form of education. Why we do this? Because all the educational institutions in Crimea, they were switched over to Russian standards of education. Their standards are very different from ours. That's why the children going into that type of schools, they do not have any opportunity to get certificate of education of Ukrainian type, and not a single country can take the certificate of education that are issued from Crimean educational institutions. So the children, they should have, first of all, the entering exams, next to be enlisted, then to have, after the finish of their studies, they can have certificate of education of Ukrainian type, and then they have the right to enter any university. What else did we do? We stipulated the rules and procedures for certificate of education obtaining for the children that are educated in occupied territory. What do I mean? If anybody just wasn't granted a certificate, then we have this procedure for children to have duplicates of their certificates. It was very difficult because, to your understanding, all the journal means all the registries and all the lists, they are being kept in Crimea, and now children, they are asking for their certificates. In 2014, the ministry, according to Ukrainian legislation, has printed all the necessary certificates for all the types of educational institutions in Crimea. Crimean authorities, they took all that certificates. Part of children that were persistent, they were handed out with the Ukrainian types of certificates, and now children, they start registration for outside independent testing. Now we suggest that children have duplicates of their certificates.
Є якісь питання?
Any questions? In the end, we will ask all the questions. The problems that are there and the problems that were addressed, and those which the students of higher educational institutions have, will be commented by Ruslan, because Ruslan is one of the students who left Crimea in March, immediately after the referendum. And according to Federal Security Service of Russia, he cannot enter Crimea now. Ruslan cannot go to Crimea. Sometimes his parents come here to the continent to see their son, but he cannot visit his parents. Good afternoon, esteemed friends. I am really quite excited because the topic of education in Crimea and education for people from Crimea are different things. And I would like to talk about, well, I like the definition that we hear elite of the nation. It's the definition of students, but I will start from those students who are still in Crimea. When we were leaving, many friends refused to do so. I was saying, but do you understand, you have no future, you have to leave. And one friend told me a wonderful thing, I believe: who will open gate for you when you try to return back to Crimea? We are here to open the gate for you. And many people are talking about betrayers, traitors, betrayal and traitors. But for me, these people, small percentage of those who are still loyal to Ukraine and who are in Crimea, they are the really heroes. Probably more heroes than those who moved to the continental part, because they are fighting there. That's very dangerous and that's very risky. I have friends who are publishing some underground newspaper with Ukrainian news, and at night they put it into the letterboxes, mailboxes. I believe that this small amount will become an important force to get Crimea back. I would like to thank the Ministry of Education and Science, because our organization, our members, volunteers, they have become the initiators of the letter that was written by the ministry to Crimea about that something is to be done. And the ministry reacted immediately. On the 20th of March 2014, the letter of the ministry was published on the simplified procedure for transfer of students. Everything was fine, but there's always a problem in there. Everything's easy with those students who were studying free of charge, but there are students who were paying less money for their education, and when they moved to the continental part of Ukraine, they found out that they have to pay much more than they were paying in Crimea. We had a meeting with the representatives of the Ministry of Education. Madam Grinevich was there, Mr. Polyansky. I don't understand why Mr. Polyansky, who's in charge of preschool education now, he's not. He's the deputy. Everything changes so fast in this country. Okay. And when we asked the representatives of the ministry, when we asked Madam Grinevich what should the students who pay, what should they do, those students will be paying as much as they were paying in Crimea. We were happy, but in a few weeks, one guy from Crimea called me, Alexander, and he said, Ruslan, I saw in the internet the statement that you are helping the students to move to other universities. I am studying in Simferopol. I want to move to Lviv. He said, how much will I have to pay? And I said, you will pay the same as you paid there. He was happy, and then a few days later he called and said, why are you lying? I called the rector, and he said, no, you will have to pay as much as we charge in Lviv, and my parents will not be able to pay this money. And Alexander stayed in Crimea, because some universities, I cannot say all of them, but administration of some universities believe that that is the norm, which is not mandatory, because those who study on a contractual basis have to pay just like others are paying. Now, as to the problems of today, I would like to add a little more. We all know what is the target, the transfer or sending. It's the document which is issued to the student with the guarantee that such a student after graduation will have a position. I studied in Crimea, and in Crimea I had a position guaranteed, which I was to take after graduation. But in Kiev, I don't think that this department, that this place in Crimea will want to employ me after I graduate from the university in Kiev. So this is the problem. The state does not recognize the students who live in the hostels as internally displaced persons. We are registered, and I'm not an IDP.
Я завершую навчання і я
In a few months I will finish my education and I will have to leave the hostel. I have no job. I am just registered in the unemployment center, but still I have no job. And I have only one way out of the situation, and I start thinking about that more and more. And my parents remind me about that in Crimea. I can come back to Crimea and I will work there. I do not know how, I do not know what I will be doing there, but I don't want. But there's no other way out. The state doesn't offer us any other way out. And there are many students who are in the same situation, no jobs, no place for living. We understand that there's a crisis in the country, there's practically no jobs there, but there's a difference between those students who left Crimea and Donbass and those who came to study from Ternopil and Uzhgorod. They have where to go back, but we don't. And we have only hope that the state will help us. We hope that we'll be heard and we will be able to stay loyal to the state, to Ukraine. Thank you. Glory to Ukraine.
Thank you very much. If you have anything to conclusions, then before you enter into Q&A, I would like to say that other than the problems Ruslan mentioned, we have several other problems that emerge, and now we are trying to solve them jointly with the Ministry of Education and Science. Are there any questions for if Ukrainian graduates will easy have their certificates? It will probably not be very difficult for them. They have a basic Ukrainian document, the certificate of 9 grades or 9 years in school finished. So the question only is how to recognize those documents according to Ukrainian legislation, and probably my colleagues will give you answer to this question. And we know that all the documents issued in Crimean territory now are void and null, including certificates. We are discussing now with the Deputy Minister, Mr. Polansky, the issue of more efficient system of education by correspondence, because Ukrainian school that open doors for us friendly, they give us a chance to have this education by correspondence or distance education. Unfortunately, it is a rather great burden for the school to the amount of school children settled in continental Ukraine, and again there will be some problem related to the outside independent testing. It is very difficult to travel from Crimea to Ukraine in order to participate in that, means in order to get those exams passed. The transport situation is rather difficult. Any child must travel with two parents alone because the documents issued before border guards, they do not recognize such documents. Permissions for the children to travel means the children of traveling to the mainland of Ukraine. And you understand that with keeping Crimea in the single educational field with Ukraine, it's a very complicated issue for many, many long years ahead. And we understand what Ruslan mentioned here, the strategy of Crimean taken back, and at least we must hold at least education in the Ukrainian legislative and say social field. Moreover, all the technical means of today, Skype and teleconferences, give us this opportunity. We are speaking about some other industries. Unfortunately, we do not have this opportunity. Thank you very much, colleagues. Now, questions, dear journalists, do you have any questions? Then, first question or rather comment from Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. A couple of weeks ago, we had people from Work UA visited us. They told us that they propose certain jobs. It's easier to find jobs through them rather than through official governmental agencies, probably. I would like to add, the matter is that children living in Crimea, we understand that some of them, they are little children, they could not physically travel to the mainland, then we suggest distance-based or externate form of education. What do I mean? A child goes to Yalta school. In parallel, he is studying in Kiev school, for instance, only once. The child must travel to Kiev school and pass the exams. Unfortunately, he must do it physically. And any school in Ukraine is obliged to take children from Crimea and to have externate educational approach for them. Not this year, and probably in next educational year. Any school is obligated to take children from Crimea for education. So 150 schools per one region. This information is present at the site of the Ministry of Education. Using externate form of education, the major principle here is goodwill of a child. Immediate question to Olena. Do you have any fear that for any child who would like to in parallel study in Kiev and he or she in Yalta school, then there will be certain problems. We understand that, and some parents, they've already approached us and they told us it would even probably a great deal of fear for us to send anything by ordinary mail. I told them no need to do that because we accept the scanned documents via email. Could you please tell us the procedure for the procedure of examination or general summarizing attestation? The procedure is in open access on our website, so the only one comment, on 24th April we have two exams joined together. This is outside independent testing and the test for Ukrainian language. The deadline for registration was set up at 20th February. We understood that many children they will be not able to do that. That's why we asked the Ukrainian Center of Quality of Education extended this deadline. It will be an additional session, and next it will be another one additional attempt for them. As a center of civil education, I would like to say that Yelena Petrovna says she's absolutely right that many issues the ministry now deals with in manual mode, so to say, and have individual approach. So anybody who would like to approach the ministry on individual basis, lets them do this. And if this is Ivanov Vasil Petrovich, then Ivanov Vasily Petrovich will have comfortable way of access to Ukrainian education. As well, I would like to recommend to my colleagues, journalists, there's a brochure on next education in temporarily occupied Crimea. You may find it at the site on the R&D Center of Integration and Development. There is very detailed information on what's going on in Crimea. Unfortunately, in Crimea today, we face kind of brainwashing, total brainwashing approach, and today they've already developed the concept of patriotic education. They have a law on anti-terroristic and anti-extremist activity, and according to this law, the school children who click their likes for pro-Ukrainian sites, according to this regulation, they already are virtually closed. It's the citation, it's a quote from they call those children as children with a distorted perception of reality. This is a citation from this document. It means that their parents will be closely watched by Federal Security Service of Russia, and most probably the students will be as well registered with the FSB, and this is probably the easiest form. They just fail to pass their exams. They will provide for that, and I mean the FSB. If you'd like to understand what is the system of education in Crimea like today, so I suggest you to look at this report at the site of Education and Development. Again, our center now do anything possible for Crimea not to be dismissed from the educational field. Jointly with the Ministry of Education on 18th May, we will start the competition or contest of the right to development. This is devoted to Crimean Tatars problem. We approached the Ministry of Education and Science, and they immediately, and this is good, this is good that they immediately have the response. They said that they've already coordinated and approved this regulation in the Almenda site. This is already hand-on this website. Thank you very much. And last question to Ruslan from me. As for students community, is it still the massive flow of students that would like to be transferred to Ukrainian higher school? As for the massive flow, unfortunately no, but we have individual cases. 1 week ago, a student, the lady student, has been transferred from Crimea to the Kiev National University named after Taras Shevchenko. So we have individual cases yet, but we must fight for each and every student, each and every pupil from Crimea, must fight for their heads, and in the nearest future it will help us to get Crimea back out of 1,000 students that studied at bachelor educational level. And we have 8,000 students. Every fifth student has been transferred to mainland higher school institutions, which is a great indicator, and you should understand it's very difficult for the parents to let young people travel for a long distance and settle down somewhere. And it's very good that every fifth has chosen Ukraine, and Ruslan properly mentioned that those people that will help us to open doors to Crimea. Thank you for your information. Crimea is Ukraine, and I believe that the civic society and everybody will support you. Our next briefing